Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning, and every single thing you thought you knew about sales is completely wrong. Everything. You see, there's this moment that happens to all of us. Maybe it happened to you last week. You're trying to convince your partner to try that new restaurant. Or you're explaining to your boss why your idea deserves a shot. Or you're simply getting your kid to eat their vegetables. And in that moment, you don't realize it, but you're selling. You're not in a showroom. You're not wearing a suit. There's no commission on the line. But you're selling something far more important than a product. You're selling an idea, a vision, a better tomorrow. Daniel Pink discovered something that shook the foundation of everything we believed about sales and persuasion. And before we dive deep into this mind-blowing revelation, if you're someone who loves discovering life-changing ideas from the world's best books, you're in the right place. Welcome to Literate Lens, where we transform powerful books into stories that stick with you forever. Hit that subscribe button because what you're about to learn will change how you see every single conversation you have from this moment on. Now, let me take you back to 1985. America is booming. 1 out of every 9 workers is in sales. The stereotype is alive and well. The pushy salesman, the fast talker, the guy who'd sell ice to someone living in Antarctica. We all knew that person. We all avoided that person. Sales was this separate profession, this thing that other people did. The rest of us? We were doctors, teachers, engineers, accountants. We didn't sell. We did real work. But then, something happened. Something strange. Something that crept up on us so slowly that we almost didn't notice. The world shifted beneath our feet. The internet arrived. Information became free. The power dynamic flipped upside down. Suddenly, the customer knew more than the salesperson. Suddenly, the old tricks stopped working. And suddenly, without anyone officially announcing it, everyone became a salesperson. Daniel Pink spent months researching this transformation, and what he found was staggering. He discovered that people are now spending 40% of their time at work engaged in what he calls non-sales selling. 40%. Think about that. You're not getting paid to sell. There's no quota, no sales target, but you're persuading, you're influencing, you're convincing, you're moving people. The teacher convincing a student that Shakespeare actually matters. The doctor persuading a patient to change their lifestyle. The entrepreneur pitching an investor on a dream that doesn't exist yet. The manager inspiring a team to believe in a vision they can't yet see. Every single one of them is selling, but none of them think they are. And this is where Pink drops the bomb that changes everything. He says the old sales model, the ABC model, always be closing, is dead, buried, gone. In today's world, if you're always closing, you're always losing. Because people can smell desperation from a mile away. They can sense manipulation. They have Google in their pocket. They don't need you to inform them. They need you to serve them. So Pink introduces a new ABC. Attunement, buoyancy, clarity. 3 words that sound simple but contain an entire revolution in how we connect with other human beings. Let me tell you about attunement first, because this one hit me like a truck. Pink shares this fascinating study about power and perspective. Researchers asked people to draw the letter E on their forehead. Simple, right? But here's the twist. People who felt powerful drew the E facing themselves, so anyone looking at them would see it backward. People who felt less powerful drew the E facing outward, so others could read it correctly. The powerful people were focused on their own perspective. The less powerful were attuned to others. And here's what Pink reveals that flips everything. In sales, in persuasion, in moving people, power is your enemy. The moment you feel powerful, the moment you think you're above someone, you lose the ability to see through their eyes. You lose attunement. And without attunement, you're just talking at people, not with them. Think about the last time someone really sold you on something. And I don't mean sold you a product. I mean sold you on an idea, a feeling, a possibility. They weren't trying to overpower you. They were trying to understand you. They asked questions. They listened. Really listened. They stepped into your world instead of dragging you into theirs. That's attunement. That's the magic. But attunement alone isn't enough. Because here's the brutal truth about trying to move people. Whether you're selling a product or selling an idea, you're going to hear no a lot. You're going to face rejection. You're going to feel like giving up. Which brings us to buoyancy, the second element of Pink's new ABC. Pink tells this incredible story about a guy named Norman Hall. Norman sold insurance in the 1960s, back when that meant knocking on doors all day long. Most people slammed those doors in his face. The rejection was relentless, soul-crushing, constant. But Norman had this ritual. Before he started his day, he'd sit in his car and have this conversation with himself. He'd ask, "Why is this going to work?" And he'd list all the reasons. Then he'd ask himself, "Why might this not work?" And he'd prepare for those obstacles. And finally, he'd step out of that car with this quiet, grounded optimism. That's buoyancy. It's not toxic positivity. It's not pretending rejection doesn't hurt. It's this beautiful balance between optimism and realism. It's believing you can succeed while preparing for the possibility you might not. Pink calls it interrogative self-talk. Instead of saying, "I'm going to crush this," you ask yourself, "Can I do this?" And in answering that question, you remind yourself of your strengths, your preparation, your reasons. Studies show that people who ask themselves questions before a challenge perform better than people who just pump themselves up with affirmations. Why? Because questions engage your brain. They force you to think, to strategize, to find genuine reasons for confidence instead of hollow cheerleading. And then, when the rejection comes, because it will come, buoyancy teaches you to see it differently. Pink shares research on explanatory style, how we explain bad events to ourselves. When something goes wrong, do you think it's permanent or temporary? Personal or universal? Pervasive or specific? The people who sink after rejection see it as permanent. "I'll never be good at this." They see it as personal. "I'm a failure." They see it as pervasive. "Everything I touch turns to disaster." But the people who float, who maintain buoyancy, they see rejection as temporary. "This didn't work this time." They see it as circumstantial. "This approach wasn't right for this situation." They see it as specific. "This one thing didn't go well, but other things are working." That shift in perspective, that tiny reframe, is the difference between giving up and getting up. Now we come to clarity. And this might be the most counterintuitive part of Pink's entire framework. For decades, we thought sales was about answering questions. The customer has a problem, you provide the solution. The customer has a question, you give the answer. But Pink shows us something radical. In a world overflowing with information, the real skill isn't answering questions. It's asking the right ones. It's helping people see problems they didn't even know they had. He shares this brilliant example. Two groups of people are surveyed about purchasing a new car. One group is asked, "What's most important to you in a car?" The other group is asked, "What's most important to you in a car, and why?" That tiny word, why, changes everything. It forces deeper thinking. It creates clarity. Pink introduces 5 types of clarity that exceptional persuaders provide. They help people identify problems they didn't know existed. They curate information instead of just providing it. They frame choices in ways that illuminate rather than overwhelm. They help people understand not just what to do, but why it matters. And they move people from accessing information to actually using it. Think about a teacher who doesn't just answer a student's question, but asks a question back that makes the student think deeper. Or a coach who doesn't just give you the workout plan, but helps you see why you've been stuck. Or a friend who doesn't just solve your problem, but helps you see what the real problem actually is. That's clarity. That's moving people. And here's what Pink wants us to understand at the deepest level. Selling isn't something to be ashamed of anymore. It's not sleazy. It's not manipulative. Not when you do it right. When you approach it with attunement. When you maintain buoyancy. When you offer clarity. Selling becomes service. It becomes helping people get unstuck. It becomes showing someone a possibility they couldn't see on their own. We're all in sales now. The entrepreneur selling investors on a vision. The activist selling society on change. The parent selling a child on homework. The artist selling the world on their perspective. Every conversation where you're trying to move someone from here to there, that's sales. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to be pushy. You don't have to be fake. You don't have to compromise who you are. You just have to care enough to see through someone else's eyes, to stay afloat when the waves of rejection come crashing, and to help people see clearly what they truly need. Daniel Pink didn't just write a book about sales. He wrote a book about being human in a world where we're all trying to move each other. And maybe that's the most powerful realization of all. To sell is human. To persuade is human. To inspire, to influence, to move people toward a better version of themselves or a better version of the world, that's deeply, profoundly human. So the next time you're preparing for that conversation where you need to move someone, remember Norman Hall sitting in his car. Remember to ask yourself, can I do this? And listen to your brain give you all the reasons why you can. Remember to step into their world instead of forcing them into yours. And remember that your job isn't to manipulate or trick or pressure. Your job is to serve, to help, to clarify, to light up a path they couldn't see on their own. That's what great selling looks like. That's what moving people really means. And that's what all of us, whether we admit it or not, are doing every single day. If this story changed how you see your everyday conversations, if it made you realize that you've been selling all along without knowing it, do me a favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Literate Lens, because we're just getting started on this journey through the world's most transformative books. And drop a comment telling me about a time you moved someone without even realizing you were selling. Because I guarantee you have a story. We all do. Now go out there and move people with attunement, with buoyancy, with clarity, and with the understanding that to sell is to be human, and to be human is to help each other become more than we were yesterday.